Folks, thank you for joining us tonight. And we're just seeing people come on in. There are 16 attendees now, and we're starting right on time. So we're still people trickling in, but we're just going to get started. We are recording this meeting. Good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining us at this virtual community workshop on the Clement Avenue Tilden Way Improvement Project. This workshop will be posted on the project webpage for anyone who wants to watch it who missed it this evening. My name is Gail Payne. I'm a senior transportation coordinator for the city of Alameda and project manager for this project. And tonight is joining me from city staff. We have Robert. Will you introduce yourself, please, Robert?
Hi, good evening. I'm Robert Vance from City of Alameda Department of Public Works, and I'm the Deputy Director and City Engineer.
Thank you, Robert. We also are joined by our consultants from Kittleson, and we have here tonight Mike and Hermanus. Mike, will you, and then Hermanus, will you introduce yourselves, please?
Sure. I'm Mike Alston with Kittleson Associates out of our Oakland office. I'm a senior engineering associate, and I'm the project manager on the Kittleson side.
Hello, and I'm Hermanus Stein. I'm a senior principal engineer with Kittleson Associates, and I'm virtually joining from Portland, Oregon.
Great. Thank you all, and thank you to community members who also have joined us. We now have 23 attendees here tonight, and let me just check if there are any locally elected officials. And I'm not seeing anyone right now. I do see Rochelle Wheeler of transportation staff. Thank you, Rochelle, for being here. And with that, why don't I start the presentation? And this is just starting up the first round of public participation, community engagement for this Clement Tilden Way project. And the purpose of the meeting tonight is really just to orient you. And we're just starting. We're going to have another round of community engagement in the probably in August, September. And so just this is the area of interest. And we're just going to show you tonight our initial goals, some existing conditions that Kittleson folks have compiled, initial ideas that we've come up with, and then to get your input on it. And so what we're talking about is this area here in front of us. We have the, it's Tilden Way, and by the words Tilden Way, just north of it, just above it, is, I call it the dirt patch, and that it used to be owned by Union Pacific. And now, thanks to City Attorney's Office and Rochelle Wheeler, we now own it. The City of Alameda now owns that property. And what's been in our general plan all along is to connect Clement Avenue and Tilden Way somehow. It is a truck route. And also just it's an opportunity for green space, open space, improved community in this area, which is now really just bisected by this major street, and somehow to calm traffic. We've heard from you all a lot about speeding and the difficulties crossing as people walking across the street and bicycling. And so that's where we're at. We're at the beginning, so you haven't missed much. We talked about the project team here. Project stakeholders, we have been working with, we've had one kickoff meeting with the project stakeholders, as well as just a meeting right before this one, like a week before, to show them the same presentation. And we're working closely with the key stakeholders in this area. This map, the star is the main part of the project. So it shows we're in the eastern end, right by Oakland. And the upper right is where BART is. So a lot of activity going between BART and Alameda, especially for people bicycling and taking the bus. We've already started reaching out to community members, sent out letters to adjacent properties, done outreach with social media, emails, and sandwich boards that sometimes are upright, but sometimes have fallen. So my apologies on that one. And we do have a project webpage and an online survey that's going on right now and still continuing. So please fill it out and ask any interested parties that you know of to fill it out. Here's in the lower right, if you can see it, is the project area. showing how its proximity. And this map is from 1924, just going back in time here, and then we'll move forward, is showing how old, this is an older neighborhood. This is, Alameda was built, a lot of it was built before automobiles. And then this map shows how, here it shows it used to be a railroad, as we just talked about. So it has a long history and a solid community around it. And so we're just trying to make it better. We do have money. We have a $10 million grant from Measure BB, and it's from the Alameda County Transportation Commission. And we used part of it to purchase the Union Pacific property. We do know we have environmental cleanup to do. And so when it comes down to actually how much we have money for construction, it doesn't look as exciting, but we do have money for it. And so that's the idea: multimodal projects, safety, and mobility improvements. And we have heard from you all with the initial survey. We've looked at the preliminary data, open-ended comments, people really wanting open space and some aesthetic improvements, landscaping as well. And we have sea level rise in our future, so flood reduction opportunities is wanted, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing people idling, and more importantly, trying to make it more attractive so people feel comfortable walking and bicycling, and then of course complying with city plans and policies. And then this is just to show you what else is going on around this area. The big red is the project we're talking about, where we've purchased a property, and what more can we do with this area in terms of transportation and some open space, green, rain gardens, bioretention areas. But then we also have on the Oakland side, they're in the middle of improving Fruitvale Avenue, and especially for bicycling, it's going to be a lot nicer to walk there as well. And then you get to the bridge, and the county is going to restripe to put bike lanes there. And then you have the Cross Alameda Trail, and that is over 3 miles all the way to Alameda Point. So we're getting that completed. And Clement Avenue is the project that will start construction this year and probably end construction next year. And that will take us to this project at Broadway. And so our project is this red section between Broadway and the bridge. And we are at the first part of community engagement, like we said, and we'll have more in August, September, and ask for approvals from Transportation Commission and City Council in the fall, and work on design in 2023 and start construction in 2024. And with that, I think this is when I turn it over to Mike. Thank you so much, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Gail. If you'll go back to the previous slide just real quick. So I want to highlight how we're going to spend the next hour and 20 minutes. So I'll walk through existing conditions, which are based on a couple of different things. Then we'll talk about a little bit of concept development, emphasis on the idea of concepts. So we haven't made decisions, but rather we've just started to delve into what we could accomplish with the project in relation to the project goals. And then we want to preserve quite a bit of time for feedback. So we have a survey on the project website, but we definitely want to take the opportunity here to get feedback in the moment on what we presented here, what gaps you think there are in our existing conditions, and what ideas you have about our concept development. So really 3 big pieces with the remaining time here. So first, let's get into the existing conditions. And Gail and I have mentioned the survey. So it's still open. So we've pulled results from the survey where we asked people about the project area. And this is as of last Monday, so about 123 respondents as of last Monday. And so we asked them a simple question about how satisfied they are with the project area. So some of you may have responded here. And so the green indicates a high level of satisfaction. Red is dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. So in general, people see an opportunity for improvement, a little bit more dissatisfied with the safety, the traffic safety of the area. Had a lot of frequent comments about vehicle speeds, about lack of pedestrian and bike crossings, which we'll get into in a moment. about bike safety, getting to and from BART, and just a generally unpleasant walking environment. So a lot of people commented that they do walk here, they need to walk here, they have destinations, whether it's the bus stop or Nob Hill, but they have circuitous paths and they feel like they're going to get hit, or generally have poor nighttime visibility. So if you flip to the next slide, Gail, we also we got responses broken down by the travel mode. So people responded, hey, I typically use this travel mode. And so then we ask, okay, well, what is your level of satisfaction with that mode? And what you can see here is, along with the comments I was just running through, people who are biking and walking to the area were responded they have a high level of dissatisfaction. So that really indicates a desire and opportunity for improvement. So going back to those goals that Gail talked about, wanting to prioritize safety for everybody, whether they're inside a car or outside of it, improving mobility for everybody as well. So we really see, based on the community input we have so far, a lot of opportunity and desire for improving conditions. Go to the next slide. So I want to go through a few basic pieces about what the transportation network is here. So the project goals, again, tying it back to the project goals, as Gail mentioned, one piece is extending Clement. And we look at existing city plans, there's two basic things involved with that. One is, you can see that dashed blue line right there where the extension would be, which is a piece of the truck route network. So it's a proposed truck route. The other thing it is a key extension for the Cross Alameda Trail. So right off the bat, we can see what that extension could serve, but there's also a lot of other needs in the area, right? There's the bridge connection for driving, biking, or walking to Oakland. There's the Nob Hill Shopping Center, which has the bus stops right there. There's a number of transit lines running through the area. And of course, there's connections to the south along Tilden and Broadway. So this map is showing a lot, and that's really because the area is doing a lot. There's also some existing bike lanes, and then some other proposed bike lanes in the area. Those are indicated by green. And I mentioned some comments that we got on the survey. We also worked with city staff to get to cull comments that were received in developing the active transportation plan. Very similar comments about speeds in the area. Very similar comments about wanting pedestrian improvements. And so if you go to the next slide, Gail, I'll pop up a few things here. So comments really indicating a desire for traffic calming or slower speeds at that Clement and Broadway intersection. Also, there's no pedestrian crossing on that sort of southwest leg at Tilden and Blanding. So people have to go around and go the long way if they want to cross there. And then down at the bottom there, where Pearl Street ties into Fernside, there's a vehicle movement that basically goes south to north where the driver has to judge a bunch of gaps to get onto Fruitvale to head to Oakland. So we got a lot of comments from the ATP and the survey about whether you're walking or driving there, that being a movement with a lot of conflicts. We did do data collection here. So we collected traffic movement counts for people driving, walking, and biking. And along with that was speed counts. So we did get average and 85th percentile speed right near the bridge. The average speed is 28 miles per hour. The 85th percentile speed was 34. And so what that means is out of every 100 people, 85 of them are driving that speed or lower, 15 are driving higher. A lot of comments about pedestrians having to cross right turn slip lanes or having indirect paths. So I've shared a lot of information with you, but this slide contains a lot of the pieces that people have identified and we've observed from our field observations about conditions and opportunities for improvement. So the next slide shows the AC Transit bus service through the area. As I mentioned before, there is quite a bit of service, including a number of key routes that serve a lot of riders. And so there's routes that come from the bridge, take that right turn onto Blanding and serve the shopping center and then head south, whether it's along Tilden or Broadway. If you go to the next slide, Gail, we've already engaged AC Transit and heard from them about what their ridership priorities are, what their bus stop location and amenities priorities are, to make sure that anything we do here preserves or improves bus service, both from getting buses through the intersections and also making sure that the bus stops are pleasant and people can actually get to them. So in those conversations with AC Transit, we've heard that they really want to still serve that Nob Hill Shopping Center up there on Blanding and Broadway. That's a really key destination for them. But they obviously they don't want any changes to degrade their service or slow buses down. Really no desire to consolidate or remove any bus stops. The stops they have serve important purposes, but we did collaboratively identify that some of these bus stops could be made more pleasant, whether it's through shelters or improved waiting areas. So that's another opportunity for this project as well. Good, next slide. In looking at safety, I've already talked a little bit about what people have shared, what our field observations have shown, what speeds are, and where some key conflict areas are. And so one more way that we can look at safety is to understand what has happened in terms of reported crashes. So what this is showing is reported injury collisions in the project study area from 2011 to 2020. Again, recognizing that reported collisions aren't necessarily the full history of what's happened, but it's what has made its way into reports. Before we talk about any patterns at the intersection, I'll note the red lines along Clement and Blanding indicate that those roadways are on the high injury corridor network from the city's Vision Zero action plan. And then the intersection, the Blanding Tilden intersection, is a high crash intersection. So this is definitely a focus area coming out of the safety work that the city has already done. And right off the bat, the first thing you probably notice is that there's a concentration of crashes at each intersection. Those little bike icons indicate crashes that have included someone biking. And a particular note, we actually did add in a crash from 2021. It's the pink crash right at Tilden and Broadway, sort of near the bottom of the screen, which was unfortunately a fatal crash in February 2021. So that's the one crash on this slide that has resulted in death. The others are injury or serious injury collisions. And so what we're seeing here is quite a bit of pattern involving people biking, involving turn movements. And then you can see a few crashes at that Pearl Street location that I mentioned as well. So this is helpful for us to understand we've talked about what the conflicts are. This is what has resulted at the intersection and in the project study area. The next piece of existing conditions I want to talk about is just a pure vehicle capacity standpoint. So in understanding, are people able to get through these intersections in a timely fashion? So what we've done to assess that is we took traffic counts in March 2022. We compared those traffic counts to what the city had from 2019 and other years that preceded COVID-19, because we know travel patterns have changed and will continue to change. We have adjusted the 2022 volumes up slightly to be more representative of pre-COVID levels. Of course, we don't know what the future holds, but we want to make sure we're accounting for that. And with that, we typically look at the morning rush hour and the evening rush hour, so the peak periods. And what these circles are showing here is that at each one of these intersections, the existing conditions adjusted a little bit for pre-COVID conditions are below capacity. So there might be a little bit of queuing in those peak hours, but in general, these intersections are operating below capacity. They're not failing in traffic engineering terms. We do also, if you go to the next slide, we do also want to not just plan for today, but plan for the future as well. So we've pulled projected traffic growth from the Alameda countywide model to understand what projected patterns are in 2040. So we don't need to be beholden to a traffic model, but we do want to understand what we do see coming based on projected land use and transportation changes. And you can see some of those greens turn to yellow or orange, indicating from our legend that they get a little bit closer to capacity. But with existing condition, with existing intersection control and geometries, in the year 2040, things are still at or below capacity. So that's from a pure vehicle capacity and operation standpoint. Okay, so those are the existing conditions. And now we get to the fun part of talking about concept development. So we've engaged some key project stakeholders, as Gail mentioned, and started to use our existing conditions to inform what our goals for this project would be, and drafted up some initial ideas, which are good for understanding constraints and getting feedback. So again, key emphasis here is what we're about to show you. Decisions have not been made. These are initial ideas and concepts. So the next slide will show how a few concepts that we've come up with align to the project goals. So again, wanting to improve safety. We talked about speed. We talked about providing more connections for people walking and biking. We talked about trying to reduce some of those key conflict areas. Wanting to provide mobility and connections for all modes. Wanting to provide that truck access for the general plan. And as important as anything is make sure we're not overbuilding. So we want to consider future projected travel demand, but we don't want to overbuild. We don't want to put more pavement down. That runs in direct contradiction with the city's goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and provide flood reduction and landscaping opportunities. So we've looked at a couple options at Fernside and Tilden. We've looked at a roundabout and a signal. And I want to say a little bit about a roundabout and how that would help with project goals. So the next couple slides will show us a few things about roundabouts. So roundabouts might be a little bit unfamiliar to some of you. Some of you might have seen these slides at other city presentations, but they're still an emerging intersection form in some areas. But over the past few decades in the United States, they have a remarkable track record for safety performance. So before and after studies, time and again, have shown not just a reduction in crashes, but a sharp reduction in injury and fatality crashes. And that's really related to a couple things. One is a reduction in key conflict types, and then also speeds. So on the right side here, you can actually see a signalized or a stop controlled intersection has 32 possible places where vehicle paths or user paths intersect where they could crash. So some of those we know result in pretty severe outcomes. Those are left turns, broadsides or T-bones, if someone runs a red light, that sort of thing. If you look at the roundabout on the right side, it essentially eliminates some of those travel paths. So there really aren't those left turn or head-on crashes anymore. It rearranges travel paths to reduce some of those most severe conflict types. The next slide will show you why that is geometrically. So let's look at this roundabout on the right side again. To travel through requires some horizontal deflection through the curvature that the intersection provides. That really slows vehicles down, and they're actually designed to ensure that you really can't take more than a certain speed through the intersection, whether you're going through, left, or right. And that's kind of the key piece that controls speeds and reduces injury severity at roundabouts. So again, going back to that research, the research has shown where roundabouts are implemented, they reduce crashes and injury and fatality outcomes. And then this slide is showing you some of the why that happens. So once you slow driver speeds, you increase the time for reaction, and then you reduce the severity if people do hit each other. And the next slide is going to show you a little bit about how bicyclists and pedestrians or navigate roundabouts. So again, sound like a broken record here, but roundabouts slow speeds, which makes them more compatible with bicycles. So the typical bicyclist will be traveling somewhere from 10 to 15 miles an hour through an intersection. And the closer to that vehicle speeds are, the more compatible they are. So bicyclists will typically have the option to either take the lane and circulate, or they can be served by essentially getting out of the roadway and using a multi-use path or a separated bike lane. So you can see on the bottom picture there, a cyclist has essentially traveled out of the intersection, and then they'll have a ramp back into the intersection. So that's much like a separated bike lane through any other intersection type. So the option exists for either one. And the next slide will show you a little bit more of a dedicated facility. So this is a video, this is a still image from a video that essentially shows how a cyclist can be separated from vehicle traffic through a roundabout. So this is showing a multi-lane roundabout, but really the key there is there's a separated bike lane. You can see the person riding a bike would travel along and then would cross adjacent to pedestrians. So both options do exist. And then the next slide is the last one I have here on an educational piece about roundabouts, which is how do roundabouts serve pedestrians? And so there's a few things I want to emphasize here. One is, again, slow vehicle speeds, and then splitter islands, which typically will provide the opportunity for a person walking to just cross one lane and one direction of travel at a time. So if you see where that arrow is pointing, or it says storage space for exiting vehicles, you really can cross one lane in one direction of traffic, pause in the middle, cross the next lane. And then the crossings will typically be offset. The benefit of that is that drivers can separate their decisions, so they can get out of the circulatory roadway and yield to drivers, or if they're coming into the roundabout, they can yield to pedestrians and then get into the circulatory roadway. So that's a little bit about pedestrians at roundabouts. Okay, so with that, let's actually talk about these concepts, and then we'll have an opportunity for feedback. So this is the first concept to present here. And again, you can see it's hand sketch, which is again, really to emphasize early stage concept development. So it's done at scale, but the details have really not been worked out. So the first piece you'll notice here is that at the Fruitvale-Tilden Blanding-Fernside intersection, there's a single lane roundabout. So that would be for folks coming off the bridge. The lanes would drop to a single lane, and then there would be a single lane roundabout to get through, whether you take a right to Knott Hill, continue along Tilden, or a left to Fernside. Moving from right to left here, it's got the light green is indicating a multi-use path or a bike or walking space. So you can see that there would be opportunities for bicyclists to be separated and stay out of the intersection. Moving a little bit further, where Fernside and Pearl are, you see there's that annotation that says right in, right out. So that's really essentially eliminating that Pearl Street conflict we were talking about, where people dart across Fernside to get to the bridge. So that's putting a median there, so that conflict goes away. So those drivers would find a different way to get to the bridge. How do folks come off the bridge and get to the potential future Cross Alameda Trail? They'd come and they'd take a separated bike lane, and you can see where that bike path could be two-way. And then they could take that right and connect onto Clement. I'm showing that as possibly being two-way as well. Another key here, we've talked about Clement Avenue being extended. This is actually showing Clement as a one-way. So for trucks coming from the bridge, they could come through the roundabout, take that right onto Clement, which is the truck route. They would actually not have that option coming back, so they'd find a different route, whether it's the Park Street Bridge or a different route to and through this intersection. So why does that matter? The one-way extension at Clement actually makes it so that for a third intersection along Tilden, there wouldn't need to be a signal, which would allow all three of those intersections to function pretty well and not have queuing backing from one next to the one into the next. We're also showing the bus stops in the same location. We've also highlighted opportunities for green infrastructure, whether that's rain gardens and other landscaping opportunities. So I'm checking to make sure I've talked about everything here. So we've talked about the one-way extension, talked about it being a single lane roundabout at Tilden and Fernside, the Pearl Street connection becoming right in, right out, and then improving the bicycle and pedestrian connectivity. And actually, that's the one last thing I want to say here is that existing crossing on that west leg where the roundabout is, you actually can't cross there today, so that would be a new pedestrian crossing there. And then lastly, we're showing that left turn where it says possibly remove left turn and narrow roadway. If you can imagine you're heading from other points in Oakland towards the project area, you know, with this concept, you could take a left at Broadway or a left at Clement. So one of those might prove to be redundant. So that's an opportunity to shrink the roadway. We'll have to do further analysis to see if that's viable. Okay, so that's alternative. We're calling it A1. Big piece is the roundabout and the one-way Clement extension. The next one you'll see is quite similar, but has one key change, which has a two-way connection at Clement. So you can see there that with traffic going both directions, some form of traffic control would be necessary at Clement and Tilden. So we're showing a signal there. In order for people to get out and back onto Tilden, they'd need a signal to control that movement. So This one provides a little bit more vehicle connectivity, including the trucks. The trade-off is that signal there, which really is pretty close quarters for a roundabout and two signals. So it would come with some operational challenges. Nothing that couldn't be worked through, but it's really a trade-off between the connectivity, that additional connectivity, and some possible operational challenges. So you might need a little more space for queuing and that sort of thing. Just like the previous concept, it's a single lane roundabout, opportunity for that path to be two-way so that folks can get to and from the bridge and the Cross Alameda Trail. And then again, that Pearl Street conflict, that's something we saw in the field, we've heard, we saw in the crash data, really eliminating that Pearl Street movement to the bridge in this concept as well. So again, quite similar in that regard. And then the third concept here is alternative B, which the big change here is a signal at Tilden and Blanding. So we were showing the single lane roundabout previously. This would be a signal alternative. Again, I want to emphasize that the exact design details haven't been worked out. So what we're showing with the green at the signal is that there is space. There is space within the city's right of way for separated bike movements. The question is how that would actually be developed for a signal concept. So the slides I just had showed the natural safety benefits of a roundabout. This is actually just exploring a signal alternative here. So the trade-off, the footprint itself, it's just a little bit physically smaller at the intersection, but it doesn't have the safety benefits of the roundabout that I showed on the previous slide. So this option might be paired with some other design treatments in and around the project area as well. Here we're showing the one-way connection to Clement again. That one could go either way. So we could do one-way or two-way, but one-way has a little bit more operational flexibility, and it just doesn't provide the two-way connectivity. Other features are quite similar. Still trying to show a median to block that Pearl Street conflict. And then still that same comment is true about the possibly duplicative left turns. So heading towards the project area, towards Oakland, you can take the left at Broadway, the left at Clement. One might be redundant. Still showing opportunities for landscaping and green infrastructure along the north side. And again, that bike path could be two-way. The key that we've really been trying to work through is how to get people from the Cross Alameda Trail out to the bridge. So they'll need to cross somewhere to get to the bridge. It could be two-way on the north side, and we could cross them over. So those are the three concepts. So there's two roundabout concepts with different Clement connections. And then there's a signal concept with the one Clement extension as well. And folks, I want to encourage you to understand that the pieces here are modular. So we're showing the one-way extension to Clement. That could be two-way here as well. But those are the concepts. So as I mentioned, we talked about existing conditions, about concept development, really trying to tie it back to prioritizing safety, improving mobility and connections for everybody, whether they're in a car or outside of one, providing flood reduction and landscaping, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and comply with city plans. And again, comply with city plans means provide the bike connections and walking connections from the active transportation plan, and provide that truck route along the Clement extension. So these are just some three initial ideas for how we could accomplish these. Again, as I mentioned, details to be worked out, but I'm really excited to use the balance of the time here to hear feedback from you, both on the existing conditions piece and on the concepts thus far. I'll invite city staff and or Hermanus to fill in any gaps on the concepts, but I tried to emphasize the main points in the annotations there.
Thank you, Mike. Great job. Right now it's your time, and just like at commissions and board meetings, where we give each person up to 2 minutes to speak, and using the raise hand feature. And so if you could start raising your hands if you're interested in speaking, that would be helpful. And please know that we've looked at the survey results there. You all definitely have varying opinions, and So that we're just asking you to be respectful to your neighbors and to your fellow community members, and to please keep your comments to 2 minutes to give other people an opportunity to speak. And then at 2 minutes, the audio will be muted. And usually we show the timer on the screen. I don't know how to show both the timer and this concept draft idea. I think it might be valuable to show, instead of the timer, something like, and maybe it's a alternative A1 or whatever the speaker wants us to show. Is that okay, city staff team? You think that, and consultant team, you think that works okay? Okay, I get the thumbs up and a nod. Okay, super. So we have 6 hands up, so please don't be shy. And 7, keep it up. All right, 8. All right. So I'm just going to, Zoom tells me a certain order, and I think it's, I'm just going to use that order. And so the first 3 are Dharmendra, Denise Trepanier, and then Maria Gallo. And so then now I'm going to click on Dharmendra. Good evening.
All right. Can you hear me? Okay, yes.
Yes, good evening.
We live on 1902 Broadway, so we are right adjacent to the railroad tracks. And we moved here in July, and within days, we had an issue where there was somebody who was homeless who moved in that area, and the Alameda Police Department were wonderful and came and helped. They know us now on a first name basis. My wife was a doctor and me, they know us now. My concern is, if Clement is opened up straight, what is that noise going to be like for us? That is my first question. And the second question is, as the bike path is going past there, what does it mean for our privacy? So those were my 2 questions.
Thank you, Dharmendra. Just so you know, everyone, we are taking notes, and we will just respond after the whole Q&A so to keep it going. And now we have Denise Trepanier. After that, Maria and James Johnston. Good evening, Denise.
Hi, Gail. Thank you so much for putting this together, as well as the staff presentation. This was super informative. Can you go back a couple of slides if you don't mind? I'd like to see the 2 roundabout alternatives that you were giving. Yeah, no, a little bit further than that. There was 2 like initial roundabout concepts that you were showing near the beginning, where you were showing 2 potential roundabout configurations when you were describing them. It's like 2 examples where you were just sort of going over what a roundabout is. One of them had full separation and one of them didn't. Yeah, I guess it's that one. Yes, yes. So if you look at this top picture here, the thing I would be concerned with if we went with a design of this first one is there's like 0 indication for a cyclist riding here. What happens? It's like the bike lane just ends and they essentially ride into a curb if they keep going straight. So if we were to move forward with something like that, I would hope that we would put in something that isn't just like, that gives the cyclist some indication of what they should do. So either dashed green or, you know, showing it's a merge area or something, because this where bike lanes just end, where it becomes most dangerous, is really unfortunate and very discouraging to cycling. So I would hope we would go, if we're going to go with a roundabout design with full separation that you showed in the other one. I guess my main concern with the full separation one, though, is that it does significantly increase for pedestrians the crossing distance. Like if you just want to go straight across an intersection that has a roundabout in it, it does seem, even though there are those pedestrian refuge areas, it does make the whole walk a lot longer. So it's just kind of something to consider if we can figure out how to minimize that or make it more pleasant. But I'm a huge fan of the roundabouts. You know, we've talked about over and over again how safety is going to be our primary consideration over everything else. This is a high injury corridor. And if this is the safest alternative, which I think you said it is in terms of the number and the severity of the crashes, then, you know, I think we have to go with the safest option because that's what we said we're going to prioritize. So I'm really excited about this and I hope we can make this work. So yeah, thanks. Just excited about the roundabouts and the safety that comes with it. So thank you for all the work you've done on this.
Thank you, Denise. And now Maria, James, and then Rick. Good evening, Maria.
Hi, is this working?
It is.
Okay. Well, I'll just echo the thanks to everybody that's been working on this, on city staff, etc. A couple of thoughts and a little bit of information. I have lived 4 blocks away from this area for about 30 years. And just want to highlight that speeders and accidents, including fatal collisions on Fernside between this project area and High Street have been very distressing. And the neighborhood for decades, and that's not an exaggeration, has been aiming for traffic calming on Fernside for a very long time. And I just want to underscore also that the families and children in our neighborhood have to cross Fernside in order to get to their elementary school. So these are some factors that really play into my thoughts and comments. What I'm hoping we are aiming for is getting to some standards that really address where we want to be, which is emphasizing the need for more of us to be pedestrians and bicyclists, and not necessarily satisfying just the people and prioritizing the people behind the wheel. I think I have heard correctly the idea of Pearl Street, right in, right out. And I think that's a good way of solving the folks that want to cross Fernside. I just wonder about that pushback. And with respect to looking at something for the future, I'd like in the future to hear more about what's being considered for all. And I'm a proponent of more housing, but I know that more housing, with Alameda being an island, causes transportation problem. So knowing all the housing that's going in on the North Shore, and hoping the Clement will be a good cross Alameda trail path, all the moving parts and looking into the future is what's more on my mind. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Maria. Okay. Now we have, and Maria and Dharmendra, if you could put down your hands, it's helpful. James, I'm going to call on you, and then Rick, and then David. Good evening, James.
James. And I live near South Shore Center. So my usage of this area has been primarily on 3 ways: bicycle, car, and then also the bus. And, you know, all 3 of those are important to me. I personally am not generally a pedestrian in that area, so I can't speak to concerns there. Now, my usage, car's fine. The biggest problems is the bicycle. It's really quite a disaster there right now. I actually had a bad experience a couple years ago with riding on Tilden towards the bridge and pretty much getting run off the road by a Safeway van, and fell over, and fortunately was only bruised, but this is really not a safe area. So one of the biggest priorities I think to see here, and that I like to see on this alternative A1 is, you know, I think it's very promising, But the biggest priority in my mind is how do we get a protected bikeway all the way to Fruitvale BART that everyone will feel safe on and that keeps bikes away from traffic as much as possible. The west end, there's the plans for the bicycle bridge, but the east end needs something too. And, I think maybe this could be that area. So with that in mind, I guess one thing is how does this connect to like a protected bike facility on the bridge, and what does that look like? Obviously, that seems to be out of scope for this project, but I would like us to at least be a little forward thinking here in terms of, making sure that there's a safe connection and we're not, ruling ourselves out from doing a safe connection over that bridge. The other thing I'd point out is that Broadway and Tilden intersection on the left there that has a signal. If we got people coming home from BART and they need to make a left turn on that intersection, do we want them going out into the left turn lane? Maybe not. I think these kinds of Dutch style roundabouts, my experience, I think it is a good idea. Look at what they do in the Netherlands and like do it here because they're very successful there, it seems like. And so, copy that, even if we don't have space for a full roundabout, if we can have like clearly marked ways for, bikes to turn left, kind of like maybe what was done on Otis Drive, for example, that might be a good avenue for exploration, I think. The main roundabout on the right, I like the idea. Yeah, as long as it is smooth for bikes, that would be, I think that's pretty good. And these bike facilities, they need to be good. The bridge, we don't want to see a 1 or 2 foot gutter that has quote bike lane on it. Let's make these things that people would take their families out on.
Thank you, James. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we have Rick, David, Andy. Good evening, Rick.
Good evening, Gail. Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody. My name is Rick Baldonado, homeowner here at 2804 Fernside Boulevard. Been living here since 2003. And just kudos to this plan. It's fantastic. It's 10 times better than what we currently have. And it's about time. I think we're all excited for these changes and safety and beautification. And obviously, we're all very proud to live here, and safety is a concern here. My concern is really more of addressed to living here on Fernside Boulevard, and I do love the roundabout idea concept. And it does seem, and I know you've done all the traffic studies, that all these people, all these commuters coming from Oakland and coming on to Tilden and making a left on Fernside are essentially trying to shortcut their way through Alameda to get to somewhere else. And they come off Tilden onto Fernside Boulevard like they're launching off an aircraft carrier until they see the speed limit sign or warning indicator flash, and then they'll slow back down. So is there any plans in this kind of this any of the alternatives that we are seeing right here for traffic calming once they go from Tilden onto Fernside? Because they just, like I said, I forget, Gail brought it up earlier, right there, that off of Versailles or Versailles, depending on how long you've lived here. It is dangerous. I know a new crosswalk has been implemented, put in there, but still, oftentimes I do see families trying to cross on Fernside and Versailles, where cars just will inch right up to the crosswalk, and that's just, and it's all the time. And so, if there's a way to calm traffic down even further before they get to Versailles, that would be fantastic. That's my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rick. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
And next up is David Burton. Good evening, David.
Good evening. Hoping you can hear me.
Yes, thank you.
Great. My first time trying audio on my iPad. First, thank you to Gail and to all the consultants for bringing this forward. This has been so long a dream for many in town, myself included. We dealt with a lot of things around this on my time on the planning board. I had my office on Broadway for a number of years between Clement and Blanding, and I lived on Versailles, not too far away, so have dealt with this as a pedestrian, as a driver, and as a cyclist for a number of years. Just wanted to put in a vote for the alternative A1 that's up on the screen right now. I think that of the ones that are shown, it definitely has the greatest chance for providing successful reductions in vehicle speeds, improvements in cyclist infrastructure and pedestrian infrastructure in this area. And just wanted to give a really strong vote for that. Curious to see as this develops how the protected bike lanes that you could develop from the Cross Alameda Trail down along Tilden would dovetail in with what's being done with the bridge, because that's seems to be the real choke point. I know you guys don't control it, but just interested to see what the details are. But thank you again for bringing this forward, and look forward to seeing it develop more. And A1 is definitely by a long shot the best alternative of the three that are shown. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And next up, we have Andy, Hannah, and then Linda. Andy, good evening to you.
Good evening. Thanks so much for having this meeting, and thanks for all the effort from the city staff that's been put into this and the study of this area. I think you heard from everybody who's come before. Some of the things I'm going to say, but will echo certain things. So I live on Windsor Drive, and I frequently walk over to Nob Hill in the shopping center. And I can personally vouch for the danger of crossing that large intersection there at Fernside and Tilden. So I love the idea of putting in a roundabout there. I have some experience with roundabouts, the way they build them in Norway, and it's so much more efficient, and it's a win in all sorts of ways. So it actually keeps traffic flowing, which I think that sometimes drivers think that they're going to lose when you put in a roundabout, but it really keeps traffic flowing in all directions. So you spend less time stopped there, less time idling, less time emitting pollution to the houses around you. Plus it lowers speed and it improves safety. So big win all around. I would echo what David said about A1. I think that's probably of the designs here the winner. And I would hesitate to put in yet another light where the new part of Clement would come out there. There's quite a few lights and traffic, anything to decisions to make in such a short period of time. So I think you'd get some unfortunate backup there. So I would also echo A1. The one thing I would add to what people have said is that right off the, so I think Rick brought this up before about how people speed onto Fernside and then come crashing through Versailles really fast. People also use Versailles quite a bit now because it's a slow street. So it's also kind of informal kind of bike route. So I'd just like to just throw that out there to make sure you consider that there's bikes coming from that direction as well. So they're not just coming down Clement and onto the bridge. There's people also coming down Fernside and also from Versailles onto Fernside. And so they need a way to successfully navigate from Versailles on taking the left onto Fernside and then entering this new design. So once again, thanks everybody for all of this. I think this is great. I hope this design moves forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andy. And now we have Hannah Linda Theron. Good evening, Hannah. I'm not hearing you, Hannah.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So first off, big thank you to everyone working on this project. I think this is a really exciting project and I look forward to seeing how it develops. I live on Clement, a few houses in from Broadway. So I utilize this area very heavily as a pedestrian, cyclist, bus driver, or bus rider and driver. I did have some questions and comments regarding the truck access to Tilden. So my question is how the access is managed so that it's utilized only by trucks and not by private vehicles. I'm concerned that it could become a shortcut free-for-all and amplify some of the issues that we have with speeding that we experience here on Clement. But that being said, if the punch through is, a non-negotiable, I know it's part of the master plan, I would like to advocate for the single direction access that's shown here in alternative A1. I agree with Andy. I think adding a signal between Broadway and Tilden would just back up traffic, and I think it might drive the fast traffic to side streets. Also, that single lane will maximize that green space area, which I would love to see developed into a pocket park. I really strongly believe that that'd be an amazing addition to this neighborhood. And lastly, I vote for the roundabout, and I look forward to hearing about the traffic calming solutions at Broadway and Tilden. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. And Linda.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, good evening, Linda.
Good evening. Thank you very much for allowing us all to comment about the proposed roundabouts. I am not an advocate for a roundabout in the United States. Roundabouts in Europe, and other people have talked about how successful they are fabulous. My sister lived in Scotland for several years and loved the roundabouts, but they're successful in Europe because people are taught how to drive through and around roundabouts. We in the United States have no idea how to do it, and there's a very specific way and methodology of how you have to approach roundabouts, yield, and continue through them. And I don't believe that we have enough knowledge in the United States in general of drivers that would really know how to effectively use roundabouts in order to achieve the safety aspects that you're attempting to achieve. So I'm not a huge fan of them in the United States. And I would like to see if there are other options for controlling traffic rather than start putting roundabouts in Alameda. Alameda drivers may get used to using roundabouts, but at that area, you've got people coming in from Oakland. They're not familiar with it. And I don't see how it's going to add the significant safety value that you are trying to achieve. And then the other comment I would like to make is that I continually hear that Clement is a truck route. At one point, Clement was a good truck route and a good thoroughfare from getting across town. But the way it has been redesigned right now, it is too narrow and it's not an effective and good truck route. It's just no longer wide enough. We had the opportunity to move the bike lane over a few feet to keep Clement the width that it was, but the city did not want to do that. So we're left with a very narrow area and you're expecting trucks to go down there and it's just not wide enough. So those are my comments. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Linda. And we still have, wow, we still have quite a few folks here, like 10. So we have Theron, Alex, Michael. Good evening, Theron.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for doing all of your efforts. I really appreciate it as well. I live at Clement, also close to Broadway. I primarily am a pedestrian and use public transportation. I very rarely drive. One of my biggest concerns as a retired Alameda Unified School District teacher is Edison School. I don't think people are aware that how many children cross that intersection at Broadway and Tilden to get to school, and also across Fernside from the other side. It's a very big concern. I love the roundabout. I think that's great. I agree with Hannah with her decision about the truck route, the cut through on Clement. My biggest concern still is this Tilden and Broadway and the traffic flow and how everybody just speeds And unless we can get that down to just 2 lanes of traffic instead of 4, and really start looking at calming that area down, we still have a significant problem for pedestrians in both the Fernside area crossing to get to schools and also Tilden and Broadway. And that's pretty much all I had to say. And thank you so much for looking at this. I also agree with Rick on a lot of his comments. And I think this alternative A1 is the best solution you have so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Theron. And next up is Alex. Good evening, Alex.
All right, is that working? Yep.
Yes, hi.
Well, this is fascinating. First of all, you clearly put a lot of work into this. It was a really organized presentation, so thank you for, for all the information and for the clear presentation. I live on Broadway. I'm often a pedestrian going along Broadway to Nob Hill, a cyclist going and a pedestrian going to BART, which in the before times before the pandemic I did daily. And of course I drive through the area as well. I had a couple of comments. One was, it sounded, there's a note on this screen that's showing right now where it says possible remove left turn. And I think I understood you correctly that you were only talking about moving a left turn as you were going on Tilden towards the bridge. But when you first introduced the idea, it sounded like you were saying coming from the bridge. I just want to make sure you're not talking about the possibility of removing the left turn coming from Oakland and then turning left onto Broadway, which is a turn that I regularly make. And I do make that turn on my bicycle as well. And I do use the left turn lane there pretty comfortably. But I'm actually more uncomfortable riding towards BART on my bicycle along Tilden. I guess this echoes some of the comments that James made about that being a difficult route. So anything that you can do to make that better, I think would be terrific. It's also sorry, I don't know what happened there.
I think that was my user error. Sorry, continue, Alex.
No problem. So yeah, I was just talking about, I would appreciate very much improved biking and pedestrian traffic towards and to and from BART. The roundabout issue is interesting. I generally would want to just defer to the experts, and you seem to have a lot of data saying that they're better, but you know, Linda's comment made me think it's interesting. In the almost 40 years that I've been driving, I've had one car accident in my life, and it was at a roundabout in Wales, because I didn't realize that the person in front of me wasn't just going to merge into the roundabout. I assumed that a roundabout meant that traffic just keeps flowing. And so I rear-ended him, assuming that he was going to keep moving. And he, of course, had been waiting for traffic to clear because he was yielding. So I do kind of wonder about that. And I also wonder, as a cyclist, riding towards the bridge, and right now, if you have a green light, you just look over your left shoulder to make sure nobody's going to make a right turn and hit you as you're driving through. With the roundabout, you've got to look over your left shoulder for those people coming from behind you. You have the additional risk, I suppose, I would think, of people going around the roundabout and potentially hitting you, continuing on to Fernside. So I just am curious about you know, what the data is there and if that isn't an additional risk. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was, though it's probably beyond the scope of this, my understanding is that Tilden is a truck route. Broadway is also a truck route. I've often wondered if we couldn't get some of the trucks off of Broadway and just have them continue up Tilden. But I realize, again, that's probably beyond the scope of this. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Alex. You got a little bit more time because I cut you off there. Sorry about that. And I think Michael is the next one. Good evening, Michael.
Good evening. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I want to applaud the decision to, I like the alternative 1A, and I applaud the decision to block the entrance to Pearl. In other words, right in, right out. That's been my main concern about this intersection. Number two is the pedestrian crosswalks could be enhanced by putting those blinking lights that the pedestrian turns on when they want to walk across the street at all four of the crosswalks near the roundabout. These are the lights similar to the ones at Versailles and Fernside. They work most of the time, and most of the time people stop for you. So I would like to see those, especially on Tilden coming from the bridge. The speeds of the people coming off the bridge are sometimes incredible. My third concern is a cyclist left turn from Tilden coming off the bridge, making a left turn onto Fernside. I live down at Fernside in Fremont, and I ride from BART on my bicycle, and the nice turn lane right now makes it very easy for me. But I'm concerned about the roundabout, how that would be applied for cyclists. And thank you very much for all your efforts.
Thank you, Michael. And next up is Colin. I see your hand up twice. I don't know if that's on purpose, but we'll find out. And then Holly and Evan. Good evening, Colin.
Hey, this is actually Mark Farrell, Colin's husband, because he sent me the invitation. I think somehow I'm logged in as him on Zoom.
Yes, we've met before. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Gail. Thanks again. Thanks to everyone involved in this. This is fantastic. 8 years in the making. Great. I'll be as quick as possible. Roundabout, A1 option. Yay, that looks fantastic. Secondly, I'd love to see next time when we meet up how this coordinates with the Clement Complete Streets project, which is separate from this, but will obviously be a huge part of it. We live at Clement and Broadway, so this greatly affects us, just like Theron and Hannah. Third, I would love to see somehow the ARPD involved. We've been trying to find a dog park, like hundreds of people have been trying to find a dog park in the East End. I've always thought that the space right along the Bridgeside shopping area that is a big green swath here would be a fantastic place for a dog park. Pet Food Express is there and there's plenty of parking. Next point, coming down Tilden, where there will be a right turn, possibly one way up Clement past our house, where that Union Pacific space is, the punch through. If we don't want a left turn coming the other direction onto that, which I agree with, then it would be great to see that green space that comes from the roundabout continue all the way down to the intersection of Broadway and Tilden. And lastly, that green space, that's the triangle there, as a former public art commissioner for Alameda, I would love somehow for this project to also coordinate with the Public Art Commission, because they're always trying desperately to identify spaces in Alameda where public art can go, such as sculpture, etc. So in addition to having bike lanes, pedestrian paths, etc., it would be great to beautify that by also having some public art. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark. All righty, and now actual Colin.
Thanks so much. Yeah, this is actual Colin.
Okay.
So I'm just going to echo a lot of what's been said already, plus one or two things. So
I'm afraid. First of all, I'm afraid to
A1
mute.
looks great. I believe my fellow Americans will be able to figure it out because I have seen them do it. I also agree with the speaker or the contributor who said that we need protected bikeways all the way to Fruitvale. It's true. Very happy to see that a protected bike lane is part of another plan. The one-way street into truck route off Tilden towards Clement, I think it's got a lot of potential, but I'm a little concerned about it running counter to priorities for pedestrian and cyclists, only because if you're also heading westbound on 2 wheels or 2 feet on Tilden, and if you intend to go straight and there's an uncontrolled intersection with a free right turn, that's a recipe for disaster. So I hope there'd be some kind of bulb out, something to, or lights, as previously mentioned, to help people who are westbound on Tilden and not in a car. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And now we have Holly, Evan, and Derek. Good evening, Holly.
Hi, good evening. I think this has been a great presentation, a lot of great information, so thank you. I live on Eagle Avenue, just one over from Clement, where it dead ends onto Tilden, and I often walk to Nob Hill. I ride my bike to BART, and I also drive as well. So I love the roundabout idea, but I'm also gonna echo the protected bike lanes. And mostly right now, when you come back from Oakland into Alameda, you're basically with traffic. And if you decide to take the sidewalk instead of being on the road, it kind of just ends. So I just want to emphasize that whatever bike lanes we have, that it doesn't just come to an end, that it actually somehow flows with traffic but is still part of a bike lane. But other than that, I think this is great. Oh, also Mark's idea for the dog park. I love that idea. I also would love to see something like that on the side and any sort of green in that area, because it's become kind of like just quite cement and not enough green over there. So thanks again.
Thank you, Holly. And Evan.
Hi, thank you very much. Really appreciate all the time and energy and attention this is getting, thanks to Gail, thanks to Kittleston, other staff and consultants. I live on Versailles, actually, between Windsor and Marina, so very close to all this. Very excited to see the improvements going. I think the safety is important. I also I think that's obviously prime here, but I also want to point out that this is a gateway location for our beautiful city of Alameda, and so some additional thoughts and considerations for sort of beauty, landscaping, that sort of thing. I know that was mentioned, but don't recall it being one of the priorities that received focus. At the beginning of the presentation, I thought I saw and Gail, I think this is when you were talking, a diagram kind of showing maybe like a bridge or some sort of connectivity between Marina and Bridgeside Shopping Center. So it's sort of either a crossover or crossing through the bridge at that location. And I just want to say very vocally that on behalf of at least, I think a majority of my neighbors, if not all of them, that we really don't want to increase the connectivity between the neighborhood and the bridge itself. I think it'd be nice and convenient to have better access to the shopping center, but I think we're more than happy to walk the extra 2 to 3 minutes to get over there, particularly if it's a safer environment to get there. I'd also like to suggest considering eliminating the punch through on Clement across Broadway, or at least all the way to Tilden. I think another speaker mentioned that. I totally agree with that comment. I think it adds one extra left turn for anybody that's turning left. If anybody's turning right, it doesn't. But the pickup in potential green space and park and community improvements for the whole neighborhood and for the city, I think would be wonderful. And we can utilize the existing light, the signal that exists there. Just to respond to one of the comments from earlier regarding the safety roundabouts, I'm sure Kittleston can dig up all the research we need to make an educated decision, a data-driven decision on whether or not it's a safe thing to do relative to normal signalized intersections in the United States. I'm sure signage will do a helpful job in terms of warning people that aren't familiar with roundabouts or new to Alameda in order to kind of facilitate the safety of that as well. And then finally, I really want to echo some of the comments that were made regarding safety on Fernsides. Incredibly important for us. I've got 2 kids, and we cross Fernside every day to go to Edison, and just really access to the rest of our neighbors and friends within Alameda, as well as having a protected bike corridor to Fruitvale BART station. I think that would be amazing. I ride my bike all the time along that Fruitvale corridor, and it's dangerous, to say the least.
Thank you, Evan. Your time's
thank
up.
you.
Okay, take care. All right, and now we have Derek, Alana, and John. Good evening, Derek.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Derek Satorn. I actually live off of High Street in Oakland, but I use this corridor for playdates with my kids, recreating, visiting friends at least once a week. Good news is that the Fruitvale project that people have mentioned on the Oakland side is going to break ground this fall. And that I think should be scheduled to open in 2024. So we will have a race cycle track all the way to Fruitvale BART on the Oakland side. I'm really supportive of this project, especially the A1 with the roundabout. I don't like the idea of having the signals. I think that's going to create some congestion. And then just ultimately, like, the existing conditions are such that it's very dangerous for cyclists. I have my 3-year-old, and they get punished past on a regular basis by box trucks. So I support and look forward to this project going forward.
Super. Thank you, Derek. Oops, sorry, wrong thing. I think Derek left. Okay, now we have Elena, John, and Stan, and I think that's it. Good evening, Elena.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thanks for taking on this project. Really looking forward to it coming into fruition. I live on the right at the intersection of Broadway and Tilden, so frequently walk through this intersection to get to Nob Hill or to get to the bus stop, especially with my kids to bring them to school. So I really enjoy the roundabout design here for the intersection along Fruitvale, but I really would like to see better traffic control measures and pedestrian-friendly measures for Broadway and Tilden. I saw some of the initial concepts, I think, from the February presentation that had some great options of potentially even cutting off traffic at Broadway to slow down a lot of the cars within Broadway, and cars just fly past our house. Our next door neighbor has had their side mirror removed, I think, 3 times over the past few years because cars just merge right into the bike lane and crash into cars on the side while they're turning right onto Tilden. So there's, the traffic piece, and then there's just the pedestrian piece of crossing that intersection, especially to get to the bus stop with kids. It's quite dangerous. So there's that piece. And then I wanted to quickly speak to the green space as well. I think I saw in the long-term vision for Alameda, it kind of mapped out the green space and access to green space within Alameda. And this neighborhood was one of the very few spots in the entire island that did not have access to green space within a half mile, or I can't remember the exact distance, but there's a clear lack of green space in just a place to bring my kids to run around. The best option is Edison School, which oftentimes the doors are locked and that's not actually a public park. So just to have some place to, get some fresh air with our neighbors and run around, even better if there's a playground of some sort. There's really no playground in this area. So just kind of nice to have, but great progress so far.
Super. Thank you, Elena. And John, and then Stan. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Gail. Thanks for this. I unfortunately didn't get into this until 7:15. I was running around doing other stuff. But what I see of A1 echoes what David Burton said, and I will certainly trust my friend's good judgment on that after all these years. I have a couple of different points. One, I frequent a roundabout in San Francisco that's right off of DeHaro and about 15th or thereabouts and 8th Street. And it works. And San Francisco drivers are certainly no better or worse than any other drivers I've ever seen in California. So I have no problem with this working where it is designed. I would like to see the flashing ped lights, crosswalk lights. I'm curious to know whether we should have a scramble at Broadway and Tilden for an all pedestrian, all direction phase. That might work, especially for the school kids. The suggestion I sent to you by email a week ago or so about the big signs at the entryways to Alameda would be great for this, where the sign says bikes allowed full use of the lane. And you post big signs and they would be something like 3 by 4 feet in size. I'm imagining, I don't know the options on that, but if you put signs like that at all of the streets that converge on the roundabout, it makes it easier for cyclists to use the roundabout safely because everybody knows they have that right. And as a league cycling instructor, bike safety is certainly an issue for me. The dog park idea sounds really good. I am not sure about the Clement one-way extension. I don't want to impede truck traffic, but if you don't have barriers to somebody coming by with an 18-wheeler at full bore onto Clement in that one-way street, pedestrians and bikes are going to be at risk. So that needs to be handled. I can't see enough detail on this drawing to know whether the curb extends to limit those right turns off of Tilden.
You're at time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. And lastly, Stan, good evening.
Gail, Mike, and the consultants, thank you so much for the work. This is really impressive work. A few quick thoughts. Number one, totally in favor of the roundabout. Any notion that roundabouts don't work is put to the lie by numerous American cities that have done it, and of course, European cities as well. As a user of all 4 modes of transportation in this corridor and a resident of the forgotten block of Clement between Broadway and Everett, I can tell you right now, something has to be done. It doesn't work the way it is now for anybody. And this roundabout concept is an improvement. I heartily salute the idea of some sort of entry to Alameda monument or memorial in the roundabout. It could create an entry to our city that we don't have on any of our other entry pathways to Alameda. That's easy. The idea of doing something with the triangle in the Broadway, Clement, Tilden intersection there is brilliant. I'm not so sure that I love the idea of diverting trucks onto Clement when Blanding is already a clear truck route, and when there's already, with the roundabout, an easy way to make truck traffic work better on Blanding. I believe this is an artifact of the left turn lane that diverts incoming Alameda traffic from the Park Street Bridge onto Clement. I think that's something worthy of further study. And I echo everything everyone has said before about Fernside Boulevard, insane speeds, better enforcement, something better for Fernside, and certainly something better for that intersection at Broadway and Tilden, which right now is an accident and a tragedy waiting to happen. Better bulb outs, maybe a scramble, whatever it takes to make people slow the F down at that corner, I'm all in favor of. Again, thank you so much for the hard work. We look forward to progress.
Great, thank you, Stan. With that, I think we're done. That was a record number. Great job, folks. Okay. And I'm going to get out of this and see if anyone has any summary comments, Mike, Hermanus, or Robert, not to put you too much on the spot. Does anyone have any comments at all? I'll just start off with, we are in discussions about a dog park and with the Recreation Parks Director. And the part where I thought it would be, we'd have the most space is right by the former railroad bridge. And that doesn't seem to be big enough. And so we may, if there's enough support for dog park, we may want to rethink it. I guess it needs quite a bit of space. So we are in negotiations on that one. And there was connectivity about with the Marina Drive neighborhood, and we predicted that you would say that you didn't want improved connectivity, so which is why we're not showing it. So we knew that concern of yours, and we don't expect to make any changes there. And I think those were the main ones I had. Anyone else?
Gail, I'll just offer, first of all, gratitude. Thanks for all the great comments and suggestions and finer points on some of the things that we raised. Someone, and I don't remember who it was, asked a very particular question about that comment about redundancy and removing a left turn. It was someone who comes off the bridge and makes a left turn from Tilden onto Broadway, and they asked the question, are we talking about removing that left turn? The answer is no, that's not the one. It was the other, it was coming in the other direction. So I just wanted to clarify, and I'm sorry, I don't remember whose comment that was. It actually was Alex, so that was Alex's comment. Yeah, thank you, Gail. So yeah, it's talking about that left turn headed towards the bridge, since a person has an opportunity to turn left just before it. So that was just a clarification.
So Mike, do you want to practice your annotation skills? Does it work?
Oh, do I need to ask you for permission?
I think it's just, I'm not sure.
Okay.
That's okay. I don't want to slow you down. I just thought it might be an interesting test of our abilities, our capabilities.
Well, it was, and I may have just failed it.
No, let's see. I think we're talking about removing this, right?
Yeah, that may just simply be redundant with the opportunity right there at Broadway. So we need to do some analysis on it and make sure, but that's what we were talking about. And then someone made the comment that if that's the case, you know, it's an opportunity to extend the median all the way down to Broadway, which is a good point. So that was the one real clarification question that I heard that I just wanted to respond to. But otherwise, I was furiously taking notes. So thank you all for the great comments and questions.
All right. I just failed the
Well, you got
tool.
the X up there.
Okay. Oh, draw. Okay. I was trying to draw a green space here. All right. Let's see if this works. Oh, no, it didn't. Well, maybe this whole idea is just a bad one, but oh, here we go. So that's the idea, right? Did I get that right?
Yep.
Okay.
A little fuzzy, but you got it right.
All right. And that would mean that we wouldn't necessarily have any crosswalks there too, because they would potentially have safer pedestrian crossings at the new crossing at the roundabout.
It could go either way with the median there.
Okay. And before I interrupted, Mike, is there something more, anything else to summarize? Okay. Well, super. I don't know if we'll have, we had talked about just ending the meeting at this point and letting you all know that, let's see, Yikes, can't get out of here.
Gail, there actually is I forgot there is one other thing I wanted to say. There you go. To the comment about drivers not knowing how to use roundabouts, it is something where, and we've talked about this in other contexts, both with Alameda and other cities, where an education program is a really good way to introduce roundabouts, especially if they're the first or one of the first in the city. There have been comments throughout the night about that. So I think it was Linda's comment about, drivers aren't familiar with it, and it's true in many cases. It's new, and someone shared the anecdote about not knowing to yield. So there's a good design is really self-enforcing, and drivers and other users know what to do. But throughout the United States, cities have really good educational resources, both whether it's online, an educational program, and then through other avenues too. So I think an education program is definitely something that we would look to promote with constructing a roundabout. So that is something that other cities have dealt with too.
Super. And I just want to express thank you to Mike, especially of Kittleson, for all his work in Harmonis as well. I know you've been working with him, and then also for the City of Alameda team. It's just been a really great group. And just one last thing is just, we are just wrapping up here, and just we're at the first round of community engagement. We plan to come back to you all with refinements based on input we've received, probably August, September timeframe. And then in the fall, asking Transportation Commission and City Council to approve a final concept. And with that, I think we are done. Thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
Good night.
Bye-bye.